The Porcelain Teacher. Sarah Chen stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror at 6:30 a.m., her alarm still echoing in the cramped San Francisco studio apartment. 7 hours of sleep, according to her fitness tracker, yet her body felt like she'd been awake all night. The dark circles under her eyes had become permanent residents, and her face carried the puffy exhaustion of someone whose nervous system had forgotten how to truly rest. At 34, she'd tried everything the wellness industry promised. Keto, intermittent fasting, HIIT workouts at 5 a.m., meditation apps that she'd abandoned after 3 days. Her kitchen counter looked like a supplement graveyard, bottles of ashwagandha, magnesium, probiotics, all promising the energy and flat stomach that remained stubbornly elusive. The irony wasn't lost on her that despite her Chinese surname, she'd spent years chasing Western solutions to problems her grandmother never seemed to have. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, her closest friend and fellow marketing manager. Another late-night client call. Coffee in an hour, need caffeine, IV drip. Sarah's stomach clenched at the thought of more coffee on an empty, acidic stomach, but she texted back a thumbs up. This was the rhythm she knew. Caffeine to wake up, protein bars between meetings, salads that left her hungry by 3 p.m., wine to unwind, melatonin to crash, repeat. The commute to downtown was the usual sensory assault. Honking cars, her podcast playing at double speed, a breakfast sandwich eaten while checking emails. But something shifted when she stepped into the office elevator with Kenji, a quiet colleague from the Tokyo branch who was in San Francisco for a 3-month rotation. While she scrolled through her phone, fighting the familiar 9 a.m. energy crash, despite 2 cups of coffee, he stood calmly, hands at his sides, breathing slowly. "Tough morning?" he asked gently, noticing her rubbing her temples. "Just the usual," Sarah replied, then found herself confessing, "I feel like I never actually wake up anymore, like I'm running on fumes." Kenji nodded thoughtfully. "In Tokyo, my grandmother always said the body is like porcelain. Strong, but it breaks suddenly if you keep hitting it in the same place." Something in his tone made her look up from her phone. His eyes were clear, skin calm, posture relaxed, despite the fact that he was dealing with a 12-hour time difference. She wanted to ask more, but the elevator opened to their floor, and the day's chaos swallowed them both. That evening, exhausted after a 10-hour day of back-to-back Zoom calls, Sarah found herself thinking about Kenji's grandmother. She opened her kitchen cabinet and pulled out a small ceramic rice bowl her own grandmother had left her, white porcelain with delicate blue flowers around the rim. She'd been using it as a catch-all for keys and loose change, but now she held it up to the light. Her grandmother had been 92 when she died, still sharp, still moving with grace, still eating 3 meals a day from bowls exactly like this one. Sarah couldn't remember her grandmother ever talking about diets or gyms or struggling with energy. She just lived, simply, quietly, with rhythms that seemed to flow rather than fight. Sarah rinsed the bowl carefully and set it on her counter. Tomorrow, she decided, she'd ask Kenji about his grandmother's other sayings. If you've ever felt tired, even after a full night of sleep, or frustrated with diets that don't last, tell us in the comments which part of this story feels familiar. And stay with us for the next chapters. The next morning, Sarah woke to the same alarm, but decided to try something different. Instead of immediately grabbing her phone, she lay still for a moment, feeling her breath. Her nervous system was already revving up, heart rate climbing, mind racing through the day's tasks. But for 30 seconds, she just breathed. She found Kenji in the office kitchen, preparing what looked like a simple bento box lunch. Not the elaborate ones from Instagram, just rice, vegetables, and a small piece of fish, each in its own compartment. "Your grandmother," Sarah began awkwardly. "Did she have other rules about taking care of yourself?" Kenji smiled as he poured hot water over green tea leaves in a small ceramic pot. "Not rules, exactly, More like paying attention. She'd say, "Kenji-kun, your body whispers before it screams, but Americans wait for the screaming." He offered her a cup of tea, not the bitter, astringent green tea she'd tried before, but something gentler, warmer. She lived through the war, rationing, real hunger. But she also lived to 97. Never counted calories, never went to a gym. Just rhythm. What kind of rhythm? Hot drinks only. Warm water, tea, miso soup. She'd say cold drinks shock the stomach, make digestion work too hard. Sarah looked down at her iced coffee and felt suddenly ridiculous. Over lunch, Kenji ate slowly, using chopsticks even for the rice. Each bite was deliberate, requiring attention. Meanwhile, Sarah scarfed down her usual desk salad while answering emails, barely tasting anything. When she finished, she felt hungry and somehow more tired than before. "Try this," Kenji said, offering her a small piece of pickled radish from his bento. "My grandmother would start every meal with something small and sour. Said it woke up the digestion." The radish was sharp, clean, alive in her mouth. For a moment, Sarah's attention was completely present. No emails, no multitasking, just the simple sensation of taste. That evening, Sarah stopped by a Japanese market in her neighborhood. She'd walked past it hundreds of times, but never went in. The store was quiet, smelling of miso and seaweed, with soft, instrumental music playing. She bought green tea, pickled vegetables, and asked the elderly woman at the counter about rice. "For energy, not weight loss," Sarah explained. The woman smiled. "Good rice gives steady energy. White rice is fine. Portion matters, not type. Use small bowl, eat slowly, stop at 80% full. This is Hara Hachibu." Back home, Sarah made dinner differently. She heated water for tea instead of opening wine, used her grandmother's small bowl for rice. Just half a cup looked substantial in the delicate porcelain. She put her phone in another room and ate at her small table, using chopsticks she'd bought on impulse. The meal took 20 minutes, instead of her usual 10-minute standing in the kitchen routine. By the time she finished, she felt satisfied. Not stuffed, not still hungry, but satisfied in a way she couldn't remember feeling in years. Before bed, she prepared tea instead of scrolling social media. As she held the warm cup, she noticed her shoulders dropping, her jaw unclenching. Her body seemed to sigh in relief at the simple, undramatic kindness of warmth and quiet. 3 weeks into her tentative experiment with what she'd started calling grandmother habits, Sarah noticed something strange in her Friday afternoon energy. Instead of the usual 3 p.m. crash that sent her reaching for a sugary snack or third cup of coffee, she felt steady, not buzzing with caffeine highs and crashes, just steady. Marcus cornered her after their team meeting. "Okay, what's your secret? You look different. Are you doing some new diet thing?" Sarah hesitated. How could she explain that she'd just been eating rice from a small bowl and drinking warm water? "Just trying to sleep better," she said finally. "Sleep?" Marcus laughed. "We're in our 30s, Sarah. Sleep is for people who don't have careers. You coming to happy hour? Janet's birthday thing." The old Sarah would have said yes automatically, would have spent 2 hours drinking wine on an empty stomach, eating bar snacks, getting home at 9 p.m. wired and exhausted. Instead, she felt a strange resistance in her body, like her nervous system was finally learning to whisper instead of scream. "I'm going to pass tonight," she said. "Early morning tomorrow." Marcus's expression shifted to something between concern and judgment. "You're becoming really, I don't know, boring. When's the last time you were fun?" The comment stung, because part of her agreed. Was taking care of herself inherently boring? Was chaos the price of being interesting? That weekend, Sarah visited her parents in Oakland. Her mother immediately noticed something. "You look rested," her mom said, studying her face. "Are you using a new cream?" Her father was more direct. "You eating enough? You look thinner." Sarah hadn't weighed herself in weeks, another old habit she'd quietly abandoned, but her clothes did fit differently. More importantly, she felt different. Her energy was more even, her sleep deeper, despite getting the same 7 hours. "I've been eating like Grandma did," Sarah explained. "Small portions, warm drinks, nothing too complicated." Her mother's face softened. "Your grandmother never worried about her weight a day in her life. She'd say, 'The body knows what it needs if you listen gently enough.'" Sunday evening, Sarah prepared for the week differently. Instead of meal prepping elaborate salads that would wilt by Wednesday, she cooked a pot of rice and roasted vegetables. She bought good tea and a small thermos to bring warm drinks to work. She charged her phone outside her bedroom and bought a simple alarm clock. Monday morning brought the first real test. A crisis client, a presentation moved up by 2 days, back-to-back meetings until 7 p.m. The old Sarah would have skipped meals, survived on coffee and adrenaline, ordered takeout at her desk while working past midnight. Instead, she took 10 minutes at lunch to eat rice and vegetables from her small bowl, slowly, while drinking warm tea. When her nervous system started revving into panic mode around 3 p.m., she took 5 minutes to breathe and drink hot water with lemon. She still worked late, but she worked steadily instead of frantically. At 8 p.m., she packed up her laptop and went home, made simple dinner, warm tea, and was in bed by 10 p.m. Marcus stayed until midnight, running on energy drinks and stress, and spent the next morning complaining about feeling like death warmed over. Sarah realized something fundamental was shifting. She was learning the difference between sustainable effort and the adrenaline addiction she'd mistaken for productivity. Would you rather force yourself with willpower or redesign your environment and habits like this character is learning to do? Comment which path makes more sense to you, and share this episode with someone who needs a gentler approach to change. 2 months in, Sarah's morning routine had become almost ritualistic. She woke naturally around 6:15, 5 minutes before her alarm, her circadian rhythm finally syncing with her schedule. The first thing she did was drink warm water with a thin slice of ginger, something Kenji had mentioned his grandmother swore by for digestive fire. The transformation was subtle, but undeniable. Her face had lost the puffy exhaustion that had become so normal she'd stopped noticing it. Her energy felt steady throughout the day, like a slow-burning candle instead of the sparkler highs and crashes she'd lived with for years. But the real test came when her company announced a major product launch with impossible deadlines. The old office chaos returned with vengeance. Catered lunches of sandwiches and chips, late-night pizza deliveries, energy drinks appearing in the kitchen like offerings to the productivity gods. "Come on, just this once," Marcus pleaded, when Sarah brought her own small container of rice and vegetables instead of grabbing pizza. "We're all suffering together here." Sarah felt the familiar pull of group suffering, the bonding ritual of shared misery and junk food. Part of her missed the adrenaline high of crisis mode, the feeling of being needed and indispensable. But when she looked around the conference room, at her colleagues' grey skin, their jittery energy, the way they crashed harder each day, she realized she didn't want to return to that nervous system state. She'd forgotten how exhausting it was to live in constant fight or flight. "I'm good, thanks," she said gently, using her chopsticks to eat her rice one deliberate bite at a time. Kenji caught her eye across the room and nodded approvingly. He'd been maintaining his quiet rhythms too, green tea instead of coffee, walking meetings when possible, stopping work at reasonable hours, even during the crisis. "Aren't you worried about seeming lazy?" Sarah asked him after a particularly intense day when most of the team had stayed past 10 p.m. "My grandmother lived through Tokyo after the bombing," Kenji said quietly. "Real crisis, real emergency. But she taught me the difference between urgent and sustainable. Most of what we call urgent is just poor planning meeting anxiety." That night, Sarah sat in her apartment, holding her grandmother's rice bowl, thinking about sustainability. For years, she'd approached her health like a crisis, dramatic interventions, extreme measures, all-or-nothing thinking. But watching her grandmother's bowl in the soft light of her lamp, she understood something different. Porcelain looked fragile, but it lasted for generations when treated with consistent care. It broke easily under sudden pressure, but could withstand daily use for decades. Her body, she realized, was the same. The product launch was a success, but Sarah noticed something interesting in the aftermath. While her colleagues needed days to recover, sleeping in, getting sick, burning out, she felt steady. Not invincible, but resilient. Marcus, who'd lived on pizza and energy drinks for 3 weeks, came down with a brutal cold and spent the following week complaining about gaining 10 pounds. "I don't get it," he said, studying Sarah suspiciously. "You look better now than before the launch." "What are you actually doing?" Sarah touched her small rice bowl in her desk drawer, feeling its smooth certainty. "I'm just trying to take care of myself like someone I love, instead of like an enemy I'm trying to defeat." The revelation came not in a moment of crisis, but in a moment of perfect, ordinary Tuesday afternoon calm. Sarah was eating lunch at her desk, rice, steamed vegetables and miso soup, when she realized she hadn't thought about food since breakfast. Not the constant mental negotiation of, should I eat this? I'll start over Monday, just this once. She'd simply eaten when hungry, stopped when satisfied, and trusted her body to handle the rest. For the first time in over a decade, food had become neutral. Pleasurable, nourishing, but not emotionally charged. She pulled out her phone and scrolled back through old photos. There she was, 6 months ago. Same face, same body, but with something fundamentally different in her eyes. The old Sarah looked tired behind her smile, carrying the exhaustion of someone always at war with herself. The central secret wasn't the rice bowl, the warm drinks, or even the slow eating. It was that she'd stopped treating her body like a problem to be solved and started treating it like a garden to be tended. "I've been thinking about your grandmother," Sarah told Kenji during their afternoon tea break. "About the porcelain metaphor." "What about it?" "I think I've been trying to make my body into something it's not, instead of working with what it already is. Like forcing porcelain to be steel instead of appreciating porcelain for being porcelain." Kenji smiled. "My grandmother would have liked you. She always said Americans think the body is a machine to be optimized. Japanese think it's more like a river. It has its own nature, its own rhythm. You can guide a river, but you cannot force it uphill." That evening, Sarah did something she hadn't done in months. She stepped on her bathroom scale. The number was lower than it had been in years, but what struck her was her reaction. Instead of the rush of validation or disappointment that usually followed weigh-ins, she felt curious, interested, but not attached. Her body had found its natural weight not through restriction, but through rhythm. Through eating appropriate portions slowly, drinking warm liquids that supported digestion, moving gently after meals, sleeping consistently. Her metabolism had healed itself through kindness, not punishment. She called her mother that night. "Remember what you said about Grandma never worrying about her weight?" Sarah asked. "Of course. Why?" "I think I understand now. It wasn't that she didn't care about her health. It's that she understood something about working with her body instead of against it." Her mother was quiet for a moment. "You sound different, Sarah. Calmer, like you're not fighting something anymore." "I think I'm not," Sarah admitted. "I think I was fighting myself for so long I forgot what it felt like to be on my own side." Before bed, Sarah performed her evening ritual. Warm tea in her grandmother's porcelain cup, sitting quietly at her small table. But tonight, she really looked at the bowl, the delicate flowers around the rim, the perfect curve that fit exactly in her cupped palms, the way the white porcelain seemed to glow from within under the warm light. Her grandmother had eaten from this bowl for decades, never counting calories or macros, never weighing herself obsessively, never treating food as anything other than nourishment and pleasure in appropriate measure. She'd lived to 92, not through force or restriction, but through gentle, consistent care. Sarah understood now. The bowl wasn't just a portion control tool. It was a teacher, showing her that small, beautiful, consistent choices could be more powerful than dramatic, unsustainable changes. That her body, like porcelain, was both delicate and durable, fragile under sudden force, but capable of lasting generations under gentle, steady care. 1 year later, Sarah sat in her apartment preparing dinner, the familiar weight of her grandmother's rice bowl grounding her evening routine. The bowl had become more than a dish. It was a daily reminder of proportion, presence, and the power of treating herself with the same gentle consistency her grandmother had modeled. Marcus knocked on her door, carrying takeout bags and wearing the harried expression she recognized from her own mirror a year ago. "Thai food therapy session?" he asked hopefully. "I'm pretty sure I'm having a quarter-life crisis at 35. Sarah smiled and set out plates, including a small bowl for herself. "Tell me what's going on." "I can't sleep, can't lose weight, can't stop feeling like I'm running uphill all the time." Marcus collapsed on her couch. "I keep thinking about how different you seem now, like you figured something out that I'm missing." Sarah served herself a small portion of pad thai in her grandmother's bowl, adding steamed vegetables she'd prepared earlier. Marcus noticed immediately. "You're eating takeout from a tiny bowl, while I'm stress-eating directly from the container. There's a metaphor here somewhere." "It's not really about the bowl," Sarah said gently. "It's about listening differently. To my body, to what it actually needs, versus what I think it should need." She told him about the warm drinks, the slow eating, the post-meal walks, the phone charging outside the bedroom. Nothing dramatic, nothing expensive, nothing that required a complete life overhaul. "So you just eat rice and drink tea. That's the secret." "The secret is that there is no secret," Sarah laughed. "Just small things done consistently with attention. My grandmother knew something about sustainability that I had to learn the hard way." 6 months later, Marcus started bringing his own lunch to work in small containers. He didn't become a perfect model of wellness. He still stayed up too late sometimes, still drank too much coffee during deadlines. But he stopped living in constant crisis mode with his own body. Kenji returned to Tokyo, but not before leaving Sarah a small ceramic tea set and a note for continuing to listen to the whispers. Dr. Martinez, Sarah's physician, reviewed her annual blood work with raised eyebrows. Blood pressure perfect, blood sugar stable, inflammatory markers significantly down. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "I'm not really doing anything dramatic," Sarah said. "Just eating like my grandmother did." Dr. Martinez smiled. "Preventive medicine disguised as family tradition. I should prescribe that more often." Now, 2 years into her quiet transformation, Sarah sometimes caught her reflection in windows and felt a deep recognition. Not the critical assessment of flaws she'd practiced for decades, but genuine friendship with the person looking back. Her body had found its natural rhythm, weight, and energy level through patient attention rather than forced intervention. At 36, she woke up refreshed, moved through her days with steady energy, and fell asleep easily. Her clothes fit well without obsessive monitoring. She ate when hungry, stopped when satisfied, and trusted her body to maintain balance. The most profound change was internal. She'd stopped living at war with herself. Every evening, as she prepared tea in her grandmother's porcelain cup, Sarah remembered Kenji's words about rivers having their own nature. Her body had always known how to be healthy. She just needed to stop fighting the current long enough to discover its natural flow. The small rice bowl sat in her dish drainer, waiting for tomorrow's meal. Such a simple thing. White porcelain with blue flowers, but it had taught her the most important lesson of her adult life, that lasting change came not through force, but through the accumulation of small, kind, consistent choices. Her grandmother had been right about porcelain. Strong enough to last generations, beautiful in its simplicity, but only unbreakable when treated with the gentle respect it deserved. If this story reminded you that real transformation comes from small habits repeated over time, not from overnight fixes, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to start this journey with you in the next story.